I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. So we need the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Superintendent, I think. Oh, yeah.
I move to approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
One second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Okay. So current events, so we need a superintendent report.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to just take a moment. First of all, we do want to recognize some folks from Pinal County Adult Probation that are here in the meeting. Adam Short, Thomas Lopez, and Sonny Rabago. I think, did I get all the names right? And everybody, if you'd stand, please. I know they have a little presentation for us. What they've done is they've worked with adult probation to go ahead and make masks that were shared out to the schools. And so they presented a number of masks to us a week ago. And then they're coming back again to present some more. This is the kind of partnerships we like to work within our community and the county. We're appreciative of the effort they've made to help us out. They're varying sizes, both for adults and kids. And so when that time comes back, if masks are still required by the county health department, and we're bringing them kids in, and some kid or some adult does not have a mask available, these should be the masks that we would go ahead and use. So it's a win-win in terms of a partnership with Pinal County. And so I just want to thank you. We'd shake hands, but we don't do that in the post-COVID world. But thank you again for the partnership. And I think you have some more that you're going to present. And we appreciate it very much, your efforts to help us out. So thank you very much. And is there anything you'd like to say, Mr. Short? Yeah.
Once again,
Need to hit the mic.
Madam President and the board, we at the Pinal County Adult Probation Department are very happy and glad that we had the opportunity to meet with Kayla about a week or so ago. This next week, we are going to officially be rolling out a community restitution program in the Adult Probation Department. The backbone of this program is Sonny and Thomas. They came in as surveillance officers. Two of my staff that have not only helped build this program, but have already proven. The very first project that we had was and these two jumped right on it, decided that there were individuals that were on probation that are actively trying to change their lives and would like to the communities. And so after reaching out with Kayla, we quickly realized that we had a providing masks that were handmade by some of our clients that are on probation. We've taken those, we've laundered them, we've packaged them individually. We hope that tonight and moving forward, we can continue with this partnership, continue to help provide anything that Holmes District might be in need of, whether it be book drive, school supplies. We have the means to do so. And once again, we appreciate the opportunity to partnership with you and look forward to the future. But more importantly, once again, I'd just like to thank Sonny and Thomas for their very hard work here.
Thank you very much, guys. Craig, could you please pull up my the report? I just want to go over some numbers. I don't have them right off the top of my head. As you know, once we get into the school year, we go ahead and let you know what the numbers are for the start of school. And what you'll see in this particular report is a comparison to last year at this time. Obviously, this is a little bit different than last year at this time. We're down 183 kids. At the top, you'll see what the comparison is by site, overall district, and then by site. You will note that both CHS and CMS, we are starting our alternative school. Those numbers right now are embedded into CHS and CMS, but you can start to see the second number you have is a comparison by grade level. Right now, our biggest loss of kids is in our early grades, and that in part may be because parents have decided to keep their children home in the early grades as a result of the situation we're in. You are seeing in some cases some increases. The numbers on this particular part of the chart are not necessarily indicative of where you're at in comparison to last year, because this just goes by grade to grade. It doesn't go by cohort. So if the kids were in third grade last year and moved to fourth grade this year, what's the differentiation? So the next one down, the third one down, does do a comparison by cohort. So you will see the fourth graders this year were third graders last year, and what's the loss or gain between students as they move through. And so at this point in time, obviously as a start, different kind of start, we're trying to track where we're at with numbers, but we are down a little bit. That may or may not change across this year for any number of different reasons relative to whether we open back up or when we open back up, or if someone wants to come back, or maybe some parents have decided to keep their kids out in kindergarten, first grade. If we're into January, February, they may want to bring them back for second semester. So we anticipate these numbers are going to move around a lot this year, probably much more so than previously. I know there was a request last year to show the comparison at the elementary level. So the fourth chart coming down just tells you what are our numbers currently at the different elementary schools. Again, this is not a comparison one, it's just to tell you what the numbers are. So I'm going to withhold real patterns and trends, because I think it's too early to see patterns and trends, because this is a unique start to the year. Craig, if you could take out of that and then go ahead and do the bond update. Okay, there's also a second one there that's try the other one. I'd like to see the one that has dollar amount. Okay, if you could blow that up just a little bit and scroll down. This is relative to the amount of work that's being done in the district. Just because we have situations with COVID-19 does not mean we have not continued to work with projects around the district. We've brought forward to you on several occasions what work is being done in the district. There's a lot of work being done at all schools. I think the critical part of this particular sheet is to understand that this is over the course of a year, approximately $23 million worth of work that will be done. Those dollars are from specific buckets of money available. 12 million of it comes from the energy savings performance contract. That's the work that's being done where we're changing the lights out. I'm going to kind of blend those two reports. There's a whole report from Arcadis, but I'm going to blend the two together. What you're seeing with the energy performance audit is that at the high school and the middle school, we've changed out the lighting throughout those sites. We're moving over to CTA and changing out the lighting there. We're also moving into Symington and Ranch next to start changing those. You will see, and I've been in several of the classrooms, we will see energy savings with the new lighting in there. In addition, there is 4 different settings you can set in the classroom for dimming the lighting. There's also a setting that's available for a blue light in the case of kids with autism. And so the initial projections on how this lighting is going to work has been phenomenal for those teachers that I've had a chance to talk about it. Obviously, when we get kids back in the classroom, they'll see it even more. Another portion of the energy savings component was the changing of HVAC units at Symington and Harmon. That work has been completed. They're just finishing up the last little bit to make sure those units work. And they're now moved over to CTA, and they'll be replacing the HVAC units at CTA. As a reminder, those are the three schools, and the only reason those were chosen versus the other schools is because there's specific statute that tells you how to do this work. And you have to meet a payback because you're paying for the purchase of the new equipment through the savings that you will generate under state law. And our other buildings are not old enough. The units on those other buildings are not old enough, so we could not replace those under this portion of the law. You will also see probably in the next, I'm going to say more October, November through March, solar going on all of our sites. Again, that's through energy savings. Right now, that program is in the middle of work with Pinal County to get approval to go ahead and put the solar in place. So we'll see the savings in there. The water savings by putting in low flush urinals and sinks is following with the lighting. So we're done with the middle school and high school. Now we're moving to the elementaries. So you're going to see a lot of work within that energy savings. You also have another approximately, we have about $8 million worth of school facilities board work. That's a state-funded group down at through the state. They have to approve all these. We have several projects in place. What you're going to see in many of the cases is weatherization, which is really a fancy word for painting. Last year we did Harmon and Symington with paint. We're now looking at doing Ellsworth Ranch, CTA with painting, and possibly Combs Middle School. So that'll be work that will be completed while we're in session. Whether the kids are there or not, we'll still continue with the work. Even if the kids do come back, we'll continue with the work. They have it set up where they can do the work. The roofing, same kind of thing. There's going to be fixing up of our roofs throughout the entire district. Again, this is under state law. In addition to that, you will notice that at CTA, we've added a bus drop-off in the front of CTA and changed the way people come into that particular site. We've also paved back behind CTA, and it goes all the way around from Gansel to Combs, or Combs to Gansel, whichever way you want to take it. There's parking in the back for the CTA employees. Plus, there'll also be parking there for our students that will be attending the alternative schools. The old district office has been remodeled into classroom space for our alternative schools. And there's also a couple more classrooms that were given to, remodeled and given to CTA. We also increased Head Start by remodeling one of the classrooms in Head Start. Those dollars were from a couple different sources. Some of the sources were adjacent ways, which is again situated in statute. I don't want to get into the nitty gritty for everybody that's here, but it's a way to go ahead and fix up ingress and egress to our buildings. And you'll also see some sidewalk work taking place off of Gansel, as well as replacement of fencing as part of that. And then we use bond renovation dollars. You'll see a new marquee down at CTA also, again, used with bond dollars for that. We fixed the well on CTA, again, with bond dollars on that. And then we moved the marquee in front of the high school to a better location out by the CPAC. Again, about $23 million worth of work, which we did not have to go to the voters to ask for additional dollars. We were able to use a variety of funding sources that were available to us. So I think it's an overall good project. The second handout you can get out of that, Craig, if you'd like. The second handout goes into the specifics of every single project. And so if anybody in the audience wants to go online and see all the different projects, you can see those that are complete, and they go through by site by site by site. I did a summary of them, but there's a fair amount of work that's being done across the district. Then if you could also now, Craig, go into the PD. Professional learning was another thing, and I'll take questions at the end if you have it. I asked Dorsey to go ahead and give us just a short summary of all the training that's taking place this summer for our staff. We have our summer camp, which is, if you just stay back up, okay, I see. No, you're fine, Craig. The summer camp, which is when we take new individuals and new employees into our system and give us some additional work, as well as current employees. And we worked on a variety of different sessions. The coaches and Dorsey and the curriculum instruction did a phenomenal job of getting all of these different programs together. And that took place between July 9th and 16th. Then we'll have some comments from the different participants on that training. Then we came back with new teacher orientation, which was the 17th through the 20th. And that was just to introduce individuals into our district and what we expect in some of the different programs we use. #Forward as an example. Again, very positive statements about how the trainings went. Then on the first day back on the 22nd, or actually the second day back on the 22nd, we went through our normal district-wide professional learning day. Again, where we reiterated those things that we have been talking about with our staff. This is part of the work, the vision and codes and the blended learning and those kind of things. It's part of the #Forward, which is the national recognition we got as a district last year as part of NCDC 20 and what we're doing with #Forward. So even though it's going to look a little bit different, we're still continuing with that program because we think it's a good program for kids all around. And so we'll continue with that. And this, although a little small pictures, go to the next one, Craig. Nope, there you go. That just gives you a little idea of how people viewed the training and how our staff rated the trainings overall. An outstanding job. And then there's a stats page where you're looking at the number of participants that went through the training. So you're talking about in excess of 500 opportunities for people to get trained on a variety of different programs and things we do in the district. This does not include all the training we had with the new student information system we have, Synergy. I know there's some parents out here that are probably getting used to Synergy. Again, the reason we moved over to Synergy this year, some people would say, why'd you move to Synergy with everything else going on? The old program we had, Schoolmaster, was no longer going to be maintained by Schoolmaster in the format that we and many other districts in the state had. And so therefore we were forced to go to a new program, and Synergy was the program that was chosen. There's other programs out there, but they went through a rigorous process with a lot of different people coming in and taking a look. And so that Synergy training was in addition to everything else that's up there. So overall, a ton of training. And again, I can't thank the CIA, the instructional coaches, Dorsey, and Al for all the work that they did with this training. It's a lot of work to set up the training. It just doesn't happen overnight. Many people doing a lot of work throughout the summer to get the training done. And then again, with lots of different changes as different things got thrown our way throughout the summer. The only other thing I have to talk about is the virtual learning. And again, we had a start last week with our virtual learning. As with anything new in the beginning of the year, there was concerns and questions about it. Some were very, very favorable to what we're doing. Others had significant concerns. There was a decision to make a change in the formatting, and in large part that had to do with our bandwidth and issues related to bandwidth and a way to free up more bandwidth. We were running, basically we were streaming 2.4 gigs on a 1.0 gig backbone. So basically the pipe wasn't very big, to make it real simplistic. And so it'd be like an LA freeway on rush hour. Lots of people trying to get on the bandwidth and not a lot of bandwidth. Some people have questioned, why didn't you fix that earlier? Well, there's two things going on. Number one, we were under the impression that our firewall would handle the load. It was not until Cox Communication came out to take a look at things we were doing at the end of July, in which they said, nope, your firewall won't work. If anybody can relate to how hard it was to get toilet paper in March. Well, just because we have an issue with a firewall, everybody's got issues with firewalls right now, not just education, but on companies around the country. So the part of the problem is we cannot get a new firewall in for about 6 weeks. And so we wanted to make sure that we could try to mitigate the slowdown and the kicking off of kids on our backbone, because we had more, again, 2.4 gigs on a 1.0 backbone. And so by doing the change that we did, we freed up bandwidth. That should make it a lot better. I've not had a chance with the way today's gone to talk to everybody. I've heard a few anecdotal points that there were some problems. Again, please understand that when we talk about bandwidth and we talk about connectivity, it's a 2, 3, 4-way street. There's lots of different plans out there from the home side. There's a plan from us on our side. And so even if we fix all of our bandwidth, it may depend on what someone has at home as to what their bandwidth issue is or not. So we're trying to work through all of those as best we can. I would say this, last March was not indicative of the usage of bandwidth across the country, across the state. Because in this state in particular, the fact that many school districts indicated that your grade was going to be held harmless, there was any number of school districts that probably had 50 to 60% of their kids that did not access any sort of bandwidth issues to go ahead and do their work, because they didn't have to do the work because the grade was what the grade was. This time, since we're at the start of the year, everybody's accessing it. And so I'm not sure that Cox, MediaCom, CenturyLink, Suddenlink, all the different vendors around the state were truly prepared for the hit on their bandwidth based on the number of schools, not just homes, but school districts across the state that were utilizing bandwidth. So this is going to be an issue that we're going to continue to work with. We have a board agenda item a little bit later in the meeting that we hope to address the issue. But again, it's not one that we can get the gigabyte right now, but we don't have the firewall that can support the gigabytes coming in. So I'll talk about it more in a few minutes. But that's a short synopsis of some of the different topics that I was asked to report on for our start of school.
I follow on the professional learning. It looks like you've done a lot of development for our employees, and I think that's fantastic. If you have to do something different next year, do you have any idea what that would be?
In case you can't hear on the call, the question was, we saw a lot of, Mr. Delana asked the question, we saw a lot of different staff development for staff this year. A year from now, if we had to do something different, what would it be? I think, to be quite frank, it depends on what's the situation we're in across this country relative to something like COVID-19. Is it back to business, quote unquote, as normal or not? If it's back to business, quote unquote, as normal, then we would probably look at expanding on some of the online stuff, or take a look at hashtag forward and doing a few things with hashtag forward that we've had to step away from because of this. But I think it's going to be very indicative of the situation we're in at the time, assessing that situation and figuring out what's best for our teachers when it comes to helping them out. And I'm honestly, with everything that's going on, it's just me taking a stab in the dark as to what it'll look like. We will start to look at it and normally start to look at those kind of things into the tail end of the third quarter, the beginning of the fourth quarter. And that will be no different next year. We'll sit down and take a look and see where we're at as a nation, as a state, and then as a district, and then adjust our training accordingly, and then plan for, again, for summer work, both in June and July. That's all I have.
Governing board member updates. Anybody want to update on anything? Okay. So 2 public comments. So I have a lot of public comments today. I should go over some bookkeeping first. When I call your name, you can come up to the podium, state your name. You have 3 minutes to present. I will time you. So at 3 minutes, I will let you know that your 3 minutes are up, and we will go to the next one. We will not, you can't ask us a question and we answer right here. I assume most of it will be about our 8.7 agenda item. So if you stick around for that, you might get your answer. So I do know, I can't see everybody that's on the call. So I do know that we had I personally had many emails sent to me. I did forward them to all of our board members so that they have read them. We don't read those emails in public. So if you thought that we were going to do that, I'm sorry. So you have to actually fill out a call to the public and present it, or do it online. So there was a way to do it online to have it presented. So with that being said, we'll start, and we'll start with, we have somebody online. It's Dr. Dave Nelson. Is he going to present this, or are you presenting?
I'm not sure, Dave, can you, I don't know if we're going to have the same problems we had a second ago. So if you could unmute yourself, Dave, and then we'll see if we'll have sound from you. If not, I have the letter and I can read it. I'm assuming he's here. Okay, Dave, just put in the chat box, no mic working, so I'll go ahead and read. This is a letter from the Combs Education Association, a distinguished governing board. The Combs Education Association would first like to commend the hard work and dedication that you have taken in the recent decision-making process for the J.O. Combs Unified School District. You have continuously made difficult decisions in regards to the operations of schools and the health and well-being on behalf of the staff, students, and community members. We applaud your commitment to the safety of students and staff members during these unprecedented times. We'd also like to single out Dr. Wyman for his commitment to transparency and openness to communication. We truly appreciate his willingness to always take the time during this hectic period to meet with us, hear our concerns, and articulate the district's position and be open to discussion. We would also like to reiterate our position that the health and safety of our students and staff is a priority, should be #1 priority as we progress, as we process and plan in the current COVID-19 pandemic reality. As the data shows, Pinal County has only met the benchmark in one of the 3 categories as they laid out by the Arizona Department of Health Services regarding the reopening for in-person instruction. We hold the very serious concern that any reopening before all the metrics have been met contains an inherent and detrimental potential for rapid spread of the disease and could potentially cause closure of schools for extended periods of time if there is an outbreak within one of our schools. Based on these concerns, we, as the Combs Education Association, publicly express our unabated support for Dr. Wyman's recommendation to delay the opening schools for in-person instruction until after the completion of the first quarter of instruction or until the metrics and benchmarks as outlined by the Arizona Department of Health Services has been met. As professional educators, the CEA understands and believes that the best place for our students is on campus and in our classrooms, but we want to provide that opportunity when it is safe for everyone to be back on our campuses. We thank you for your time and consideration in this matter. Dr. Dave Nelson, President, Tiffany Carlson, Vice President, Gail Brimley, Secretary, and Matthew Steele, Treasurer.
So the next one, now, don't get mad if I don't say your last name, because it's Trisha Jersey, is that Justice, okay, sorry.
That's right. Stupid.
So go ahead.
Okay, so my name's Trisha, and I have 2 sons. One is going to be in 1st grade, and one's going to be in kindergarten. They are both autistic, so they somehow heard that school was going to be starting the 17th. They have it in their heads, 17. I don't know where they heard it, but they did. So my biggest concern is I work full-time. My husband works full-time. I do have a stepson that's home with them when I'm working, but he has his own issues too. So I can't be having them virtually learning. It's just nearly impossible. I can't even get my son to brush his teeth, let alone sit at a desk and learn. Last year, I was able to do it for about 15, 20 minutes. But my oldest wanted a toy that was $30. Now, for a parent, once a week, okay, that's fine. But every day, to get him to be able to do it, we can't afford it. So I can't be taking off time of work to be able to stay home to make sure he's getting his needs done, or both my sons are getting their needs done. My kindergartner is super excited, super stoked. Again, he has the 17th in his head. So he's super stoked, super excited. But they just don't understand in their brains why they can't go to school, what's going on. My oldest knows that there's a virus, but he doesn't understand what that is. So like I said earlier, I worked full-time, my husband works full-time. We just can't and we won't. And so I flat out have told my son's teachers and the district and the principal that if this does go viral for the remainder of the school year, I'm gonna have to pull out my kids for the whole school year because they just can't do it. And then my stepson, I'm gonna have to pull him out So I just wanted to let you guys know that that was gonna be my plan, that this does go this way. But they can't virtually learn, they can't do it, so, but thank you for listening.
Thank you. Okay, I have Amber, is it Buckmeyer?
Yes.
All right.
I have a 7-year-old at CTA in 3rd grade. Today, she's crying and screaming because her anxiety is so bad. They went from being in 2nd grade, doing what they were doing in class, and then all of a sudden this thrown together studies at the end of the year. I'm sorry, I don't feel like she learned anything. Then they start up this year, and they want them to start as if they had started like they just left 2nd grade. This is the very first year she's ever done social studies. They're asking the 7-year-old all these questions, no explanation. It's during your independent work time, and when she types in questions, well, get on at 1:45 and I'll try and answer. Okay, well, guess what? The whole class is on at 1:45. She's not getting her answers met. She's having extreme anxiety because she doesn't understand it. All of a sudden, she went from learning words here and there to an entire page of writing in cursive. She's losing her absolute mind, and it is terrifying to watch as a parent. I've looked up statistics. I don't understand why it's so scary when you've got Pinal County alone, a 99.96 survival rate. Arizona, the entire state, death from COVID, under 20 years old is 11. My child needs her education. Everyone's children. My situation is different from the woman that just spoke. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm with them 24/7. I don't mind her being there. Problem is she needs to be in school. I don't want you guys to babysit my kid. I need her educated. And that's what I felt. Thank you.
Okay, Amanda DeMoss, is that right?
Just to ask, I know you said that you can't answer questions now. Can I ask a question and have something, in writing, or is that possible, or you guys don't take questions at all?
Yeah, there can be answers to it later on. I mean, the
Okay.
board can direct me to go ahead and respond to particular things. It may also be answered in the course of the conversation when we get to the agenda.
Right. So I know obviously we're doing online learning. My 5th grader is doing great. So, however, my 2nd grader, she obviously is a little more difficult for her. We're making it work, but my problem is I think that maybe not all the questions have been answered. I mean, I know that you guys did a survey wanting to know how many parents wanted their kids to go back to school in person, online, that kind of thing, before you guys made your decision. But do we have, district-wide, does our district have an issue with teachers wanting to be in the classroom? Because that obviously makes a difference. So I'm asking as a parent a percentage of that, and I think that we should know the percentage of teachers that feel comfortable returning and that don't feel comfortable returning. That would make it a little more understanding of why our kids may not return as fast as other schools. Also, there are several schools that are returning on Monday, right down the street. So the chances of us not returning and then you guys losing kids is obviously, I'm sure you guys have probably looked at that. I'm just hoping that maybe there can be a survey that is done, that maybe there's certain teachers that are willing to teach in class, and those parents that are okay with their kids returning, that maybe it's a half and half. That way, maybe it meets the needs of every family, or pretty close. I know you're not going to make everybody happy, but I would be curious to know what those, what that percentage is, and if that's something that has been thought about, if it's something that's even possible. Again, like I said, the younger kids, it's very difficult for. My 5th graders seems to be doing fine, but he also, I think it also depends on the teacher. He has an awesome teacher this year, and not that my 2nd grader doesn't, but she went from loving school to hating it. So
So I think that maybe if you do stick around at 8.7, I'll ask your questions. Perfect. Okay. Kara Dawson.
Hi, I know you won't have had a chance to look over the things I added, but I emailed you. I got responses from 76 families in the district regarding returning to school in person. If you'll notice when I posted the top extremely neutral post, even though I will tell you my opinion now, because I came for that reason. And the numbers look very similar to your original. We're looking 70-30-ish. The people that were comfortable are still with you. They're still comfortable returning in person. The people that weren't probably ever going to want their kids to come first quarter are still in that same boat. As I listened, the main concerns that I had that from the feedback that I got from people was specifically, and specific teachers emailed me, students that are in special needs category, their needs are not being met almost at all. And I'm in the boat with the lady at the front. I have a son who is autistic, who is repeating kindergarten this year. He's repeating kindergarten for a number of reasons. The main reason we stayed with the district is because your amazing teacher, Rebecca Hardy, moved up from preschool and is teaching kindergarten. And she gets him and she loves him and he will be successful in person. I have 5 kids. If you could only imagine what it looks like to run from computer to computer, the changes you made in time spread out people, but the people that need help are elementary age children. They do not know how to type. They get easily frustrated. Right now, there is a march going on at the state for in-person schooling. There's a large movement. And if you looked at the pictures these parents post online of their kids crying, the kids under the desk, these are not our children when our children are in school. They may have moments. My son definitely had moments, but that is not their experience. My high schooler said to me, quote, "If this goes on past fall break, I would like to drop out of school." She is an honor student, involved, engaged, great student, motivated. Everything that was important to her about her education is taken away. Also, we are, as a district, looking at the fear, not looking at the things that we can look at with regards to a very high component. During 1 6-week period in Pinal County, there were as many suicides in our county as there were deaths from COVID. That is significant. Children have needs that are social, emotional, physical, intellectual, spiritual. And when we look and only focus on one component of that, we miss a large part of the pie. A large part of these students I hear saying they might get their GED or do other things because this is not school.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Okay. Renee Ziegler, is that Ziegler?
Close, but no, whatever, it's okay.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Rainey Ziegler. I just want to introduce myself really quick. I am a mom of 8. I have 1 child that graduated from Combs 2 years ago. I have 3 enrolled in Combs. I have 3 in a different school district, and I have 1 preschool student. I just also wanted to let you guys know that I volunteer a ton of hours at the school. I'm there all the time. Also, Dr. Wyman sent out an email to certain parents, a few of us, and asked us to come and be a part of the learning curve, and I joined. I'm very busy. My senior is a 3 varsity sport kid. My middle schooler plays sports. They're in all honors, and I made time to do that because I care about my kids' education. And we also are obviously taxpayers. I am an advocate for public schools where my kids live, and I love Combs School District. And I tell everybody, come to Combs, it's great. Also, we donate and sponsor. We own our own business. We donate and sponsor over $1,000 every year to sports, to education for our kids here in homeschool district. For the last 6 years, we've done that. I have a senior right now, one in 8th grade and one in 6th grade. And like I said, I have 3 in another district too. So you can only imagine my house. I have 7 kids in my house. I've got 6 Chromebooks going. Now we have different times. My kids are great kids. My senior is an all AP, all honors. He's actually 2nd in his senior class right now, ranked 2nd. He has people wanting him for scholarships. And he is so nervous that he is not getting his education. I'm going to read to you what he wrote. My name is Levi Tuckfield, and I am a senior at Combs High School. I take honors and AP classes, and education is very important to me. I want to attend a university in the near future, but online schooling limits my education. I don't feel as motivated to participate. And I may be wrong, but the teachers probably feel this way also. If I thought about my senior year a year ago, I would not have pictured it like this. I feel like what I will learn online won't prepare me enough for college or my future, that I've worked so hard for. I hope I get to experience my senior year in school, being a 3-sport varsity athlete and ranked number 2 in my senior class. I'm sincerely asking you to allow us to be in school. And I promise you I have been positive. I have said things online that I am grateful for the hard work you guys are doing for our kids and for our teachers. And I'm grateful for that. But today I lost it. This is too hard. My kids need me in school. And I don't have autistic kids. I don't have kids that are struggling, but I do have kids on the other end that are still struggling. Please let our kids in school.
Let's go to action items, the consent agenda. Do you guys have any questions on the consent agenda? I'm gonna make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Pat seconds. All in favor? Aye, motion carries. So our first action item, discuss the consideration for approval of the high school medical assistant program, textbooks and supplemental materials.
Yes, this agenda item is just to get approval to move forward on the medical assisting program. We've had the textbook and the supplemental materials per state statute out for the 60-day review. And so at this point, the recommendation from Mr. Scroggum is to go ahead and move forward with the materials as listed. It is aligned with the Central Arizona College's medical assisting program. So that would make sure that the dual enrollment program, and actually I think today, I'm not sure if Mr. Scroggum's around, but today in our conversations, we're actually thinking we may be able to accelerate this program to start the kids working this year, not having to wait till next year. We'll work on a few details with that. But the overall cost of the program, or the textbooks, excuse me, is $10,688.76. That includes tax. And so I would go ahead and recommend approval of those textbooks as presented because it's beneficial to the CTE program for the medical professions program.
Any questions on that? All right, I'll need a motion.
I move to approve the Combs High School Medical Assisting Program textbook and supplemental material purchase as presented.
That's Stephen seconding. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Okay. Discussion and consideration and approval of Combs High School agricultural improvements.
I know there's been talk over the years about working on the agri-science area. and in particular, adding to the land lab that's out there for those students that are taking agri-science. There's been several different proposals that, for I don't know all the reasons because I wasn't here, for a variety of reasons, haven't moved forward. What this particular agenda item is for us to go ahead and move forward with some initial upgrades to the facilities out there to make sure we're aligned with the Arizona CTE agri-science state standards and provide a safe outdoor hands-on learning experience for the students. The agricultural lab improvements would include prep and assembly of a district-owned 20 by 10 by 36 greenhouse. The one thing that won't be done is there will not be a cement floor. It'll be dirt floor with some rock down. In some ways, that's not bad for a greenhouse because you don't run the risk of running mold. We'll prep and assembly of the district-owned 20 by 40 by 10 two garage shade structure. Excuse me. And then the prep of the ground pad for the district-owned metal storage unit. So they went out to bid for 3 different vendors, and the most responsive bidder was $11,000. The range was fairly high, to be totally honest, on this particular bid document. A difference of close to $30,000. We believe this contractor, DA Contracting, is a responsible bidder, and so would recommend approval. If you approve this today, we would anticipate that this work would be done and complete roughly mid-October, and so it's the next step in fixing up the agricultural program at the high school. So I would recommend approval as presented.
So, I have a question. So there was a greenhouse there before. There was.
Dr. Duplessis, can you see if John's around? Oh, John, help me out, because I haven't been around as long as you.
President, members of the board, there was a greenhouse, and it was destroyed by the wind, and so we collected a portion in insurance and then applied that to the purchase of a new and much larger greenhouse, which was much needed.
So the insurance is going to help cover part of this cost then?
Well,
What you're saying?
not of this cost, no. The greenhouse has already been purchased, the new greenhouse.
Okay.
So this that we're proposing today is really just the land prep. We're going to take measures to properly anchor both the greenhouse and the shade structure because we get a lot of wind in that area. There's nothing to block the wind, so we just want to make sure that it stays put in there. Yeah, and actually the last one did blow away, but it was just it was hit pretty hard by a windstorm.
I did a tour of it, I think it was last year or maybe the year before. I kind of feel like once these things are put up, they need to be taken care of, because I don't think the last ones really were. Things were in a lot of disarray. I took pictures and stuff.
Yeah, we part of what we are doing is we are adding storage, and that's a large issue with what we have out there. We just have one 40-foot container, and so we're trying to use that as both a storage and kind of a work area. We have no shade for the students. That's why we're adding a carport. So we're actually adding 2 40-foot connexes and a 20-foot connex, so that we can use some of that stuff in the storage and then use part of it as a workshop type area. So that would be a huge improvement. We ultimately, as Dr. Wyman alluded to, we would like much more, but we went out for cost. It was quite prohibitive unless we go out for runners. Really put in what we
I'm not opposed to it at all. It's just a lot of money that I expect it to be taken care of. It's there. So, I mean, I know that my younger son will probably be part of that program. So, I'm in favor of any of the CTE programs, quite honestly, but I just, it was very sad a couple years ago, so I just don't want it to be in that predicament again.
understood.
Do you have another question?
Yeah, if with this work, does it comply with ADA? I mean, I assume that what they're doing is building ADA compliant for access.
I would say so, yes. We're not changing anything. We have a concrete slab that the old greenhouse was on. We're going to maintain that part of the slab so that it is ADA compliant. The entire greenhouse won't be that way. Obviously, we mentioned that it's prone to mold if you have solid concrete in there. structure doesn't change the landscape at all. It's just a shade structure. So again, we're not really changing much of the part of what we have now.
Who potentially maybe a realtor has access to these.
Yes.
Any more questions? All right, I'll need a motion. Did you have a question?
Nope. I have a motion.
Okay, sorry. All right,
I move that we approve the Sunshine School Agricultural Lab improvements as discussed.
I'll second.
that was Bob, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries 5-0. Okay. 8.3, discussion and consideration for approval on revised fee schedule for 2021.
Yes, the fee schedule was brought to you earlier in the spring, and you approved it. Obviously, with addition of the medical assisting program, that's now a fee that had to be added to it. We also are looking at the removal of some fees for English, math, science, and social studies, a $5 fee that we do not believe is warranted. The other piece that I'm asking for this, there's a lot of questions about fees right now, given the uncertainty of what we're in right now. So I'm just asking for authority to make adjustments to the fee schedule in terms of prorating fees, refunding fees, or canceling fees, depending on what happens with COVID-19. So you've already approved the fees. There's a couple additional ones to approve and remove. But then even after that, over the course of the year, there may be any number of different situations that we have to address relative to when do things come into play or not come into play. Are we on in and out? Are we all in the whole time? If we were to do a normal year, then the fees would stay the way the fees are. But if we end up having a situation where we can't start right away, or we have to go back out because of an outbreak, there may have to be some reductions in some of those fees. And so I'm just requesting that so that we don't have to keep bringing it back to you guys. You will get a report from me of any changes that we have to make on the fees, but it just makes it a little bit easier for us to conduct business and help parents out if there are changes to the fees.
Any questions? Mr. Ray, you don't have any? Any comments? Nothing? I just went and I'm looking at your eyes. You're good? Okay. All right, I'll need a motion.
Okay, I'll move to approve the revised fee schedule for 2021 and provide authority to the superintendent to adjust the fee schedule after this.
Second.
Chad seconding. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. I'm sorry, Steve. I'm looking at your eyes to see if you're okay. 8.4, discussion and consideration for approval of bandwidth and firewall upgrade.
This is a conversation that I had a little bit earlier about expanding our bandwidth. What we'd like to do is upgrade the bandwidth to 3 gigabytes per second. The upgrading of the bandwidth to 3 gigabytes per second should handle the capacity of live streaming that we're currently doing. The issue we have in terms of the upgrading to 3 gigabytes is that it's really going to CenturyLink and asking for the upgrade is not really the problem. It's the firewall that is prohibitive of us being able to expand the bandwidth. And so what we're asking is a two-part process here. Number one is to upgrade the firewall. That projected cost on the upgrade of the firewall is $85,820.26. That will allow us to take up to 10 gigabytes. We would initially go ahead and purchase 3 more. You can see in the costing of the 3 that it would be $3,850 per month or $46,200 annually. 2 of the gigabytes, roughly $29,000, will eventually be covered by E-rate. Again, for those who are not aware of E-rate, E-rate is a federal program. We would pick up the cost the first year, and then after we fill out the paperwork with E-rate, E-rate would fund back us 70% of that amount. We would pick up the difference. That same formula would be applied if we move forward with additional bandwidth. I have asked for a request up to 6 gigabytes. Our initial projection right out of the gate would be to get us 3 once the firewall comes in, but then we're positioned if something happens and we need to expand that. Example, we bring more computers into the district because of some stimulus dollars that come in. Then we would want to look to expand that. We're in a better position to move to expand it. So I would request up to 6 gigabytes. Our initial would be 3 plus the firewall to move forward. So that's the project, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Earlier you talked about the backlog of getting the firewall routing
Right.
equipment. So how does that affect us with this?
We would anticipate, based on what they're being told, that we'll get it in about 6 weeks.
6 weeks from the time we place the order?
Whether the order will be placed tomorrow. We've already had communication with vendors, and we're ready to move as soon as you approve it, but it'll be anticipated at 6. And again, with everything that's happening, it could have come in a little bit quicker, it might come a little bit slower. We ordered these masks early on. We ordered them in May, we didn't get them till mid-July. So it just depends. We've got electrostatic cleaners that we ordered for our custodial. They haven't come in yet. We ordered the swivels. They came in the timeframe that they said they would get them for. So there's a randomness to this, and the supply chain is there's no one set thing that we can say that if we ask a company and they can tell us, even if they tell us. We were told these would be in within 3 weeks. 6 weeks later, 8 weeks later, we finally got them. And so I just say that because that's the issue that we have, but we're being told that that's when we'll get them. We'll push as hard as we can to get them as soon as we can. But again, there's lots of different people around the country in lots of different professions that are looking at technology upgrades. And so it becomes difficult to get some of this stuff.
So we need to wait for the firewall to be put in
Yes.
before we upgrade.
Yes. The firewall is basically that which is going to let everything into the bandwidth. And so it's blocking us. We got a 2-lane entry point into a 10-lane highway. And unless we increase it to a 10-lane entry point, then you're going to have a blockage trying to get on the 10-lane highway, to put it in simplistic terms.
So let's say that we're not having events this week, something that we can do.
I mean, that was our long-term plan, was yes, to continue to expand the bandwidth, obviously with where we're going and what the long-range plan of #forward is. Our plan was to expand anyway. We're just obviously pushed to the brink with everything that's been happening within the current situation.
Didn't we discuss something about Pinal County
We are,
going to?
right. We last year you approved a situation where we would join with Pinal County and expanded bandwidth, and it's actually a ring configuration, meaning there's a ring of fiber that goes throughout the entire county to all the school districts and connected. They have not yet completed all of that. So yes, we're part of that program, but they have not yet completed all that. When they complete it, what it does is really give us redundancy. We would have 2 access points to get on. I believe they were at a roughly 10 gig fiber network, but to my knowledge, as of right now, they have not totally completed that. And again, it goes across the entire county, so they're probably at different phases in different places within the county. And as soon as that gets done, we'll have an access point too.
So that's this thing, and are we getting any federal dollars to help?
We have some. We did last spring. There were some federal dollars that were put forward. Those federal dollars were utilized at this point to address the swivels and the iPads for the swivels, along with some other things. It was approximately $800,000. There is some additional dollars that are coming in. We just received the information from the governor's office on Friday. We're not sure what those dollars are going to be because there's 2 markers, and it depends on whether if we lose more than 2% of the kids this year in comparison to last year on the 40th day, then we get a certain amount, which is significantly less. If we have 1.9% or greater, so a loss of 1.9 or higher, then we're in the running for a different set of dollars, which would be potentially upwards of $1 million. And so at this point in time, we are looking at it. It has to do with the governors. If some of you remember with the executive order, whether you're going to get 1.05 for the number of kids you have, or you're going to get 98% of what you had before. Please know that in the 98%, it's not dollar for dollar. So if we lose 2% of our kids, our overall budget will lose $600,000. The most that we'll get back under the current plan from the governor is $225,000. So we'll lose just short of $400,000 in that particular scenario. So you're running a swing of somewhere between $225,000 up to $1 million, depending on what it is. We have no control over it. It is the number of kids we have. ADE will pull the numbers on the 40th day, and the state will tell us what the numbers are. We can look at the formula and we'll run the numbers. but we're dependent upon that. Any other stimulus dollars are tied up at the federal level right now. The executive orders that were signed this weekend had no dollars associated with public schools at all. If the R's and D's come back in Washington and continue to negotiate and they come up with a different stimulus package, the proposals that have been on the table do provide significant amount of dollars for perspective. The first stimulus package was about $13 billion coming out of the feds. The three proposals that are on the table right now at the federal level run somewhere between $54 billion and $105 billion. Now, some of that dollars are tied to universities, some are tied to community college, some are tied to K-12. And so until that's negotiated and we see what it is, we will not know. At this point, we're not counting on it because we're not quite sure where that whole process is going to go. So there's about three different buckets that we potentially could get some money. A couple that we did get it, one that we did, one that we look like we're going to get some numbers. We don't know what. And then the third is we're dependent upon whatever the Congress does to figure out the next stimulus package.
Any other questions? All right, I'll make a motion.
I'll move to approve the upgrade to the district bandwidth and final technology infrastructure as presented.
Pat, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. 8.5, discussion consideration of approval to waive liquidated damages section of certified teaching staff contracts.
Okay, in our contracts, and this is not unique to jail combs, I'd say it's probably about a 50-50 split across the state. Many school districts have a liquidated damage clause in the contract. And that liquidated damage clause says if you break your contract after the date that you sign it, you're going to owe a specific amount of dollars for breaking the contract. In our case, for certified staff, that liquidated damage is $1,000. For administration, that liquidated damage is $2,500. We have had, I think, approximately 5 individuals that have broken their contracts. They have requested that as a board, you consider the waiving of the liquidated damages. Per the contracts, you're the only one that can waive the liquidated damages. I cannot do that as a superintendent. It's in the contract of the board. That's only one can do it. In terms of what's happening around the state, as is the times that we're in right now, it's all over the place. There are some districts that gave people a period of time before, let's say, the beginning of July to mid-July to get out of contract, and they would waive it. If someone left after that, then they wouldn't waive it. There's some districts that are probably still waiving it, and there's other districts that never waived it. So there's not a pattern out there that says we're just going to automatically waive this. It's probably individual, district by district, depending on the situation that's taking place. The reason for the waiver over the historical perspective in the state is because in many cases years ago, people were jumping out of contracts at the last second to get a better deal with another district right next door or down the street type thing. And then you didn't have anybody to cover class when class started 2 days later or 3 days later. So the liquidated damages was designed for us to cover the cost of advertising, substitutes, all those kind of things to go ahead and get someone back in. And so in our situation with the 5, in some cases we have replaced individuals. In other cases we have long-term subs and we're working to replace the individuals. And so it just varies. The only portion that I'd have you think about is this has potentially an impact on down the road. So I'll need in a motion clarity as to, is this like some districts did? If you get out of your contract by this date, we're going to waive it. If you don't after this date, we won't waive it. Or is this, we'll waive it all year long because of COVID-19. And so I just need a little bit of direction because depending on other decisions that are made over the course of the year, there could be some other individuals that decide that they want to step away from teaching. There's probably, to be totally honest, at least a half a dozen different reasons why people would suggest that they might step away from their contracts. And so it's not maybe a concern with safety, maybe concern with who's in their home and the possibility of bringing it home. It may be related to medical condition that just can't handle the stress of it. So there's a lot of different reasons why they may step away. So I'm just trying to get some motion from you guys to tell us how we move forward with this.
questions or comments?
In the past, and I know you're relatively new to the district, so maybe someone else knows the answer. Have we waived the damages and what were the reasons that we have?
I'm looking at Dr. Duplessis, he can come up here, but I'm going to say, generally speaking, it's been very rare that it's been waived. Most of the districts I've been, it's been very, very rare that it's been waived, if ever, but I'll let him speak to what's happened. In the district.
That is correct. Board members, Dr. Wayne. It's been very rare and it's been for medical reasons. Not to get into specifics, but medical reasons.
I would say medical reasons that contain the actual person in question.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Not somebody in their family.
Yeah, so, maybe that's another comment. I hope this doesn't sound come across wrong. You know, I believe that the federal government has made provisions to the FFCRA and with, you know, FMLA, and they have those options. And so that would be, you know, resigning from a contract is the only option that people have. You know, those additional options for them.
Can you say that people could, instead of resigning, take some type of a leave?
That's correct.
If they're already out there?
There's to the three leaves that Mr. Ray speaks about. FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act. You can have up to 12 weeks on family medical leave. The couple differences with family medical leave, it's very prescriptive under federal laws to what you can do. The key component of it, just so you're fully aware, there's nothing wrong with it. What family medical leave does is guarantee you a position in the district once you come back. As a teacher, it guarantees you a teaching position. Depending on what's going on, when you come back, you may be teaching third grade instead of second grade, but you still have a guaranteed position. During that time frame that you're out, the district will continue to pay for your insurance. However, you are not allowed to work when you're on Family Medical Leave Act. So anybody that chooses FMLA will not be able to teach for us because it's against federal law. With the FFCRA, which is the new federal fund tied to COVID-19, that pays for people who are going home due to COVID-19. It will pay for up to 80 hours if you're sent home because you're COVID-19 positive. Or if you're required to go home and take care of a loved one. I believe the way the law is written, it speaks to spouses as well as children, but not beyond that. The Family Medical Leave Act is a little bit broader in who you work with. And if you do it because of a spouse, it pays for up to 80 weeks, 2/3 of your salary. Problematic as of right now, that program ends December 30th. And so there may be some individuals that would go home this semester and they would get their sick days basically given back to them. If someone were to come back, unless they make a change in the next stimulus bill in January, then they would not necessarily get that. We do not have it in our budget to pay to give back people's sick days for COVID-19. Now, again, if there's another stimulus package or a CARES Act type package, I think they're calling it HEALS right now, then that may change it. But as of right now, that one ends at the end of the current year. And then we do also have ADA accommodations, where if an individual has identified medical situation where they need an accommodation, then we have paperwork and they provide that paperwork for us. And then we review the case. And based on the situation with that case, we would make accommodations. It's not an automatic that they get sent home as an accommodation. It depends on the situation that is taking place. And in many cases, they may not get sent home, but we would take a look at it, assess what the doctor's note tells us, and then make a call. As of right now, we have I believe it's 3 of those cases, but we probably have another 6 to 9 that are out, and we're waiting to see if people our employees will give us those. So those are 3 options, as Mr. Ray says, that people can use. I just give you that little background so that you understand. In some cases, people think they can take one or the other. If I'm home on a pregnancy and I've had my child, can I go ahead and teach from home if I'm on the 12 weeks of FMLA? No, you can't. You can come back early if you want. You could stay the 12 weeks, but you're not able to teach from home because it's against the law.
I'm wondering if we decide to approve the waivers, would we these 5 people. If we then decline to approve waivers in the future, someone starts teaching and then says, I'm uncomfortable with what's gone by, what kind of legal liability would that face?
There would be some there, definitely. I think that we should always be looking at these on a case-by-case basis. Individuals have different issues. In this case, they are all, and the board needs to make that decision moving forward.
Can I make a comment? Just in my years as in school administration, having been a teacher and having had contracts of this sort, that always was frustrating to me as a teacher to think if I had to leave, I'd get penalized for it and I'd have to, pay a penalty for it. As an administrator, I came to realize that having some sort of a penalty in there for breaking a contract is an effective deterrent and actually very helpful because it's detrimental to the students if the last minute right before school starts, a teacher chooses to break their contract for, in some cases, what could be considered a frivolous reason or for a reason where, I committed to you, but last second I got an offer somewhere else that was a little better. And so I took that. And so then you're left in a lurch. And so I believe that the reason we have that caveat in there is to help discourage teachers from leaving us in a lurch that's unfair to the students is the real issue. Because then it's hard to find a teacher to replace them that quickly. So I'm in favor of having the deterrent in place, but I think the nice part about having the language that we have and that I've seen in other schools that I work with is that it is meant to be a case-by-case basis. And there are reasons and times when it is completely reasonable to go ahead and enforce that. And there are times when it's completely reasonable to show a little bit more mercy and be understanding and say, under your circumstances, we understand. You didn't leave us for any other reasons because of these that were out of your control or things like that. And so for me, I would think issues related to COVID in this particular circumstance would maybe fall under the category of a time in which it might be reasonable to waive that.
Let me play devil's advocate here. Someone in a month finds that they have an opportunity somewhere else. They come to us and they say, I can't keep going into the classroom, COVID related. How do we know?
We may not know that.
And then we could be left high and dry in the situation you just mentioned.
That's true. We could be, but we can't control that.
So what I'm saying is we would have to accept people's words for it in the future, which I think throws us as a district in a very untenable position of not having teachers for classrooms.
Well, but normally the decision to do this or not do this is usually taken care of in a more private circumstance. It's not always public record as to whether or not that person got it and that person didn't. So it's not necessarily it's always known, so they can come back to it and say, well, you let them do it, well, how come you can't let us do it?
What I'm saying is that could become an easy excuse.
Possibly. I don't know, in this case though, Dr. Duplessis, do you think that these teachers, are they sincere in their concerns and their?
I believe so.
Well, do they have is there medical issues that they have a medical reason? I mean, that the doctors have said, this is, and instead of just, they're just feeling uncomfortable, or is there a medical issue that has been presented? That would be my deciding factor. If it was a medical issue and the doctor said, this is not a place for you, you're compromised, you cannot do this. The thing about it is that we knew this going at a fourth quarter. And it went through all summer. And now we're getting these now. So we got burned the last 2 years where they were wanting out of their contracts, and we actually did enforce the $1,000, but they went to a neighboring district, not even 2 days later. So, I mean, that is still very much an issue, I think. I don't have a problem if they actually have a medical issue and they brought it to us, but because they feel uncomfortable, then that $1,000 is, we're still finding somebody to replace them. We're still I mean, our kids are already crying as it is. Let's throw in a sub that doesn't have a clue what we're doing now, and that's just gonna go even worse. I just feel like it, and we even opted to increase that, and we decided not to. We had the discussion of increasing it to 3,000, and because that's what our neighboring districts are doing, and we opted not to do that. So I get it, and I understand the uncomfortable. I mean, I think we're all uncomfortable at this point in some way or another, and they signed a contract, and I just kind of feel like that's where I'm gonna stand on that.
Yeah, there was never been a question in my mind as to our date of moving until maybe tonight, right? So there's never been a question, so I would agree with
The answer to your question is I don't believe in any of these cases there's an identifiable medical situation that was presented to us for the individuals involved. There was a concern, and I'm not trying to minimize the concern, but I don't believe there was any medical provider.
Everybody in this situation is concerned about one thing or another, so, if you have any other questions, I mean, we can put it to a vote, but it's fine. Questions, concerns, comments?
you know, I mean, I would move to not. I mean, they need to make, so I move to,
Okay.
Well, we have to make a motion, I
right,
think, to stay as is.
that's right.
Yeah, either way, you can go ahead and make a motion to go ahead and not waive it, or you can not make a motion and they'll just die, in which case the contract stays there.
So wait a minute, I'm thinking that you wanted some direction as to when we move forward,
Well,
or are you gonna just bring it to us case by case?
no, I'm not gonna bring it case by case. If there's no motion on the table for this particular item, then I'm gonna assume your direction is that we're not gonna waive the liquidated damage irrespective of what the reason is. So we're saying if you decide to break your contract with us, then you owe us the money that's in it, if it's 1,000 or 2,500, depending on which employee group you are. And I'll just assume that's what your direction is and move forward accordingly.
And I understand what everybody's saying. I think I would appreciate an actual motion. And I just feel in this particular case that it would be an okay circumstance in which to do it. I think it's a unique circumstance. Anyway, so I'm okay. I may be thinking differently than the rest of you. So if you want to just have a motion, that's fine. Will it make more sense because the motion is to do a waiver, right? Or to not do it?
No, it's, I did not.
The motion is to waive it at this point.
But again, I would say based on what the talk is, if Mr. Ray has a motion on the table, I would go ahead and move for a second on the motion on the table.
Yeah,
So, we don't need to make a motion. So there is no motion because I don't think it needs to be done. The contract states as it is, and so there's no motion.
okay, so then at this point, you would need to make your motion. If you want a motion made, you need to make what you said, and then we all.
Okay, if you want to do that,
Yeah.
I just disagree. So if we want
That's
to
fine.
if you want me to make a motion, or if we can just note it that I disagree with.
Let's go.
But if you want to note it, you have to make a motion, and if you want it on the record, we have to take a vote so that those that oppose or agree with, it's in the record. So we can't just note to the discussion. We would have to actually make the motion.
Okay, well, I realize I'm not going to get a second. So I move that we waive the penalty and the contracts for the teachers under these circumstances that is presented tonight.
For clarification, you can second this for the purposes of discussion and then end up voting it down in a number, so you don't automatically.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Motion carries, one.
Fails.
Yeah, motion fails, 1-4. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Blue.
Thank you.
Okay, discussion and consideration for approval of Arizona Risk Retention Trust COVID-19 liability.
Yes, since we're in this unprecedented times with COVID-19, within the last, I think probably the last 2-3 weeks, can't remember exactly when, we're notified, and when I say we, the entire state, all school districts in the state, and actually universities and colleges were also notified, so this is not a jail cone situation. We're notified that our insurance company, the Arizona Risk Retention Trust, did not have coverage for COVID-19 claims that would be filed against the district, and had not had coverage as of July 1st. The reinsurers at the higher level had not anticipated, did not anticipate, would not anticipate what would occur in the case of COVID-19, and therefore they did not have it covered. The trust went ahead and went out to seek additional coverage for liability, and without that coverage, if someone filed a claim with us, then the cost to fight the claim would be on the backs of the district without any support or help for liability insurance with the trust. They were able to secure additional premium or an insurance situation where liability be covered for school districts in the state. They have a sliding scale. There's two parts to this. There's a sliding scale. The cost of that insurance depended on how big your district ran. It ran from $5,000 to $150,000 depending on the size of the district. In our case, the cost is $45,000 for this insurance. As part of that, the coverage, the liability, it's a $1 million coverage per occurrence, $10,000 per claimant, and $2 million in an annual aggregate for the district. It's only $25 million in an annual aggregate for all school districts. So depending on the number of cases that may or may not come forward across the district, or excuse me, across the state, once they get to the 25 annual aggregate limit, there's no dollars available for it. Our reasoning to provide the insurance, although it's not a huge number in terms of the cost, or not the cost, but how much you'll get out of a claim, is if we were to lose a case and it was be $4 million, well, then we're on the hook for $4 million without the insurance. With the insurance, we're only on the hook for $2 million. Now it's a gamble no matter what you do. And there's another portion to it that probably needs to have some conversation. The deductible is variable, and this is probably some things that some people in the audience may have heard of. If we do not have any of our students and families sign an acknowledgement, let's see if I get this right, acknowledgement and disclosure form, which is pretty benign, to be totally honest, and a waiver release form, then the deductible for each instance is $20,000. If we have families sign the acknowledgement or disclosure form, the deductible is $10,000. If we have families sign both the waiver release and the acknowledgement and disclosure form, then the deductible is $0. There's been some press about the waiver and what the impact of that is. If you want to give me direction on the waiver piece, I'll be more than happy to take it. Technically speaking, for both the acknowledgement and disclosure form and the waiver release form, those are not issues until kids come in school. If the decision were to start school on this Monday, then we would have to move something out to all of our families this week. If the decision were to not start school till later, then we would move out this information to our families within a week or so before. The acknowledgement and disclosure form is just a form that says, I understand what the expectations of the district are relative to COVID-19, not send my child to school if they have a temperature, check them every morning to make sure they have that they don't have a temperature, understand that I won't necessarily be able to come on campus because of COVID-19 related things. Understand that if my child does show symptomatic symptoms of COVID-19, I'll be called and asked to come pick up my child within an hour, and a series of like 10 or 11 different components of it. It doesn't have any waiver responsibility. You're not giving away any rights with that particular situation. It's just saying we understand this is what the district's doing. The waiver itself, actually, you do give away the rights, so to speak. You're saying that I'm not going to sue the district if my child has COVID-19. Because of the unpredictability of COVID-19 and the concern that no matter what you do, you cannot guarantee 100% anybody's safety due to COVID-19. And so if they sign that waiver, then whether they actually effectively give up the rights or not probably depends on which lawyer you talk to. I will tell you that the way the trust will work, if you all five are sitting up here and a couple of you decide to sign the waiver and the other three didn't, and you all decided to sue us, then the trust will come back and look at each individual and say, okay, you signed it, so the deductible is 0. You signed it, so the deductible is 0. You didn't sign it, the deductible is now 10 or 20, depending on the acknowledgement form. So they're going to go case by case. To be totally honest, we don't know what the impact of potential claims are or not. The number one question that's out there from the trust perspective is, how do you prove where the individual picked up COVID-19? This is for families and students only. The reason it's not part of staff is because staff have workers' compensation. And therefore, if there was a situation or an issue where there's a claim relative to COVID-19, it would fall for staff under workers' compensation. So this would not be a situation that involves staff. It would just involve our families.
Have any questions, Pat?
Well, that doesn't mean it's going to get paid. What would happen is, if anybody sues us for any situation, then there would go ahead and be an investigation. And based on that investigation, based on the situation, there would be determination as to whether the trust feels that it's a valid claim or not. Obviously, anything can be taken to civil court if they want to take it to civil court. And so they could go ahead and do that if they chose. Again, if you had it in that situation, then there would be documentation that they signed something or they didn't sign anything. And so this is new ground, I think, because of the potential size of the liability. And so this is preventative to some degree. I will probably tell you across the state, it's a hit and miss which districts are deciding to pay that coverage or not, and which are thinking that the ability to prove where the COVID-19 case came is such that we don't believe we necessarily need the coverage. Our recommendation is to get the coverage, because I know there's a number of people that feel it will be very difficult. I think in some cases it's not going to be nearly as difficult as maybe others think.
So whenever we make a determination as the church and the state, these forms will be sent to parents.
If you give me direction tonight, then those forms will be sent out approximately, again, if it was this Monday, today's Monday, I mean, if it's next Monday that we started, we would put it out tomorrow or Wednesday.
Each family would then have the option as to whether
Yep.
to complete and sign or not.
Yep, the direction from the trust is for us to make the best good faith effort as possible to send them out, but it is ultimately a family decision as to whether they wanted to sign or not sign.
And you send these forms out electronically.
That would be, well, let me back up. The acknowledgements and disclosure form, we're looking to figure out how we can send it out through Synergy. In order to not have, I know a couple of people had fairly large families, we would want to send out 5 or 6 forms for them to fill. So we believe with the acknowledgement form, you can do it once in Synergy. It would be into the parent view portion. So it would be for the parent, but it would reference the fact that all the kids in the district that are my kids would do this acknowledgement. For the waiver, given what is situated with the waiver, my recommendation would be to send out a form to every single parent, and they have to fill it out for every single child, whether that means one signature with all the kids' names on the form or multiple forms. We haven't worked that out, but in the case of the waiver, given what the waiver means, there'd have to be a designation to understand that we know the kids that are assigned with the families.
Any other questions? Comments? All right.
All right, so I move to approve the Arizona Risk Management Trust COVID-19 and liability coverage in the amount of $45,000 and provide acknowledgement and disclosure form to families as presented.
For clarity, but not the waiver.
So it says,
Right, I put it in there because I wasn't sure where you guys can go. So if you want the waiver, you got to give me direction on both of those.
and the waiver.
And I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. I have no idea what just happened. All right. Okay, so the moment everybody's been waiting for, discussion consideration for approval of resolution for COVID-19.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and there's, Craig, I'm going to ask you to pull up the COVID-19 board resolution. There's a bunch of other pieces under this, and so I'm just going to move through and have us, to make it easier for everybody, is to have a conversation as we move through the actual resolution. For the board's perspective on this resolution was written by a series of attorneys that deal with school districts across the state. The resolution was in response to the executive orders that the governor has put out. In some cases, there was, I'll just say, some conflicts between some of the different executive orders. I think we're in the neighborhood of 7 different executive orders that impact school districts that have been released by the governor since March. And in some cases, with the ones that were released in the end of June and into July, there is a little bit conflict and some confusion on some of those pieces. And so the attorneys that work with school districts got together to go ahead and have a conversation and provide direction for districts. We'll get through all the whereas, and those are referencing, and when you get to the second page, I believe you'll have a second page, Craig. Okay, at the very top, number 1, which is what everybody's here for, in conformity with Order 1 of Executive 2020-51, so that's the last one that the governor has put out. The recommendation coming from me as a point to start conversation, and I will withhold my reasoning until you guys have had a chance to discuss this, and I will give you my reasoning for what this motion is. I know this is a hot button issue. Trust me, I've spent many nights awake trying to figure out where do we go in this situation. I read quite a bit on what's taking place in this country and the impact, and so it was not made lightly. But I will give you the opportunity to have a discussion before I go ahead and give you my background or my reasoning. But the motion, or excuse me, in this portion of the resolution, the governing board would approve the return to school teacher-led classroom instruction beginning the second quarter, Tuesday, October, that should actually say 6th, I apologize for the error, the 6th, 2020, if Arizona Department of Health Services / Pinal County Health Department public benchmarks are met. The board will reevaluate on September 9th, 2020 if the criteria has not been previously met. So in this case, there's 3 different criteria that are available. Currently in Pinal County, we meet one of the 3 criteria, and I can go into more detail with that if you'd like after we have a conversation. If you get to all 3, and again, for those that are not aware, the criteria coming from ADHS is red, yellow, green. And so if you have any one in a red, you can't not move forward to the next level. If you have greens, then you have to take a look, and depending on what it is, you're either going to go to yellow for everybody's knowledge. If we were to go to yellow, it's what we talked about from the beginning, where parents would have a choice as to whether they wanted to have their kids remain at home or have their kids return to class. If it's all green and it meets the green criteria, then we would return to school, quote unquote, as normal. Just because we're saying we're returning to normal, there's still going to be some parents that do not want their children to come to school, so we understand that piece. We've done 2 surveys of parents. Our last survey was approximately 65, okay, I think that's right, 66% wanted kids to come, 34% wanted their kids to remain home. Now that was July 15th. We have not done surveys since. Previously, the one we did in early June was roughly 70-30. When we surveyed our staff was slightly higher than the 70-30. I believe it was, the questions for the staff was a little bit different, but it was in the ballpark of an 80% that were willing to come back. Again, that was early June, and then again in mid, can't remember now if we did it again in July. And so the numbers changed a little bit in both cases, but about 5 percentage points. I believe we did both parents and staff. It changed about 5 percentage points. Now, we have not redone that since that point in time because we're looking to move forward with some of our decisions based on it. We would anticipate if there's a start date later than this Monday, that we will again survey parents relative to what their choice is. Some people are wanting to change from where they were before. And we would survey staff again as to where they stand on this. The changing of parents saying they want their kids in or out because of the way we set up our schedule would not necessarily have a huge impact in terms of changing student schedules. There's some districts that you have to change the entire master schedule. We don't have to do that based on what we did. But it does bring into question whether we'd have to make adjustments relative to social distancing and some of those kind of issues. And so there will be another survey coming out to parents, one final one. It just depends. If you say start Monday, we're not going to get one out in time to get the results back. So we'll just move forward with the results that we have from approximately July 15th. If you push it out, then we'll look to get clarity from our community.
Okay, so, I don't know where you guys want to start. Just want to ask questions, or do we, well, I guess let's just do some groundwork here before, so number one, we have three categories that we have to, I'm backing up, I'm not even back. So green, if we're in the green, if all of them are in the green, that means everybody comes back normal. Now, what does that mean?
Okay, if you go on ADHS's website and you go on the far left schools, you will see the three categories. The first category is either a decline in overall number of cases or less than 100 for every 100,000 residents. So it's an either or. Your second category is a positivity rate. If it's greater than 10%, if it's between 5 and 10, if it's less than 5. And your third is hospitalizations for COVID-like illnesses. And so because they have a red, yellow, green, it's very similar. If it's above 10%, it's red. If it is 5 to 10%, you're in yellow. And if it's below 5%, you're in green. So if you have, but the way they do it on the website is they just do a checkbox that either says yellow, or says red or green. So if you have three greens, you then have to look at the scale and say, am I in the yellow category or am I in the green category? And that's just the way ADHS put it together. They actually put something very similar today for businesses that came out today. So green does not automatically put you back to normal. It may put us in yellow, which is what they're calling the hybrid model, which is we would have our parents choosing whether we want them at home or not.
In our instances, like 4 homes, if we said all of our things are in green, that means we come all back.
That's what I'm saying. If we had the 3 that said green, then I have to look to see, because what happens is ADHS will give us out numbers every Thursday. So I'm going to give you the numbers that they gave us this Thursday. Okay. They showed, and the other piece that gets confusing is it's 3 weeks out. Last week's doesn't count because they don't have the finalized number. So it's the previous 2 weeks. So when they look at the previous 2 weeks, we do not meet the criteria for having less than 100 per 100,000 homes, or population. Right. But their second one, we have had a decline for 2 weeks. So we got a green check mark because we met that. That green though, that check mark was, and I'm going off memory, so it'd be maybe a little bit off. That rate was not below, I gotta think I'm getting them confused. We had a decline, and that one is an either or. If you get the decline, then you can go green. If we go to positivity, okay, our positivity rate was a red, and it was a red because our rate for the 2 weeks hovered between 13.8 and 11.1%. That's above 10. If we got a green check mark, we then have to look and say, is that rate now between 5 and 10, or is it below 5? If it's between 5 and 10, we're in the yellow phase. If it's below 5, we're in the green phase. When you look at the third category, hospitalization, you do the same thing. Our hospitalization over a 2-week period has ranged between 12.1% and 8.8%. So if the next week, this Thursday, they come out and it is between 8.8 and 8.8, we are green, but we're in the yellow range, so we would be in a hybrid model because we're not below 5%.
Okay, so that's what I'm asking you. So, okay, they give us all green, but we decide that they're yellow, okay?
Well, no, we don't decide. I mean,
But
the
it-
chart,
because
the
it's
chart,
in the chart.
right,
Okay.
right, the chart
So
tells
I'm
us.
just saying, like, in all intents and purposes, like, we're good to go. Like, if everything is green, great, we go back to school, it's business as usual. If we're in the hybrid model, that means that when they make a choice, they stay home or they can come, okay? So, but if we're red, that means,
Their recommendation would be then you don't start up school.
But it's a recommendation.
Right,
So-
it's a recommendation.
So the reason we're here discussing it right at all is because, just to make it clear, right, is that the health department has these metrics as guidelines, and now just recently, the governor has now shifted the authority to make the decision to local school boards. Based on the idea of, here's the recommendations, here's where it's at. And so basically, the governor has now pushed that decision-making to localities. The information's there to make an informed decision, if I'm understanding right. But they're just recommendations, and we decide what we want to do,
Right.
regardless of what it says.
Yes.
So that's really what we're discussing, is whether
correct.
we want to move forward now that we have that authority given to us.
So, what if there is an outbreak and let's say the high school gets five outbreaks, now what happens?
Well, the definition under what was released by AHS is an outbreak is 2 or more. And the 2 or more has to be, I forget the exact language, but the gist of it, to make it simple, is you're not living in the same household. So if I have a teacher in a classroom that has an outbreak and we have students that are test positive for COVID-19 and we have a student that tests positive for COVID-19, they're not in the same household, that's an outbreak. After that, it gets a little fuzzy. All they say is work with, in this case, County Health, Pinal County Health, and there'll be a decision as to whether you close a school. You would automatically close the entire district. If you had a situation at one of our schools, you wouldn't necessarily close it. They have not given us, and I have not heard, Pinal County is on Health is on a meeting we have every Wednesday, and they have not given us direction to say, we think that at this percentage or this number, we're now going to close. And so I can't give you a total answer because I don't have an answer from anybody that tells me, is it 2? Is it 5? Is it 10? Is it 5%? Is it 2%? It's varied from state to state. Some states have said, if you have this percentage, then we'll close the school. If you have this percentage of schools closed, you close the district. Other places have used the number. So at this point in time, because we've never gotten to this point, I don't know what the answer is.
So ultimately, would the health department come in?
Right, but there's a question as to, so back to the statement that Mr. McLeod just made. There's a question as whether and at what point the health department can actually close you down. I've heard 2 different stories on that they can close you down, but then I was on a webinar just last Thursday or Friday, and I heard something different. So we have to get clarification from what is the authority of the health department in terms of closing down. I'm sure at some point they can close you down, but there seems to be a question is when do you hit that point? And nobody's shown that to me in the last 2-3 months.
Any other questions? I'll let you guys come. You guys have anything?
I do.
Okay.
Actually, probably have a lot to say. I think this is probably one of the biggest decisions we're going to face in our time on the board. And I appreciate all the community members and parents who come and express their opinions. And I know it's going to be important for kids to get back to school. I've got 2 grandkids, one entering kindergarten, one entering 2nd grade. Today was their first day of school online. It didn't feel, when I spoke to my son, like the first day of school. So I truly understand what you're saying. A couple of things that I'd like to bring to our attention, if we don't already know, is a statement that was put out by the Arizona Department of Education, guidance for on-site support services. And part of this document talked about the public health update. And it said, the Arizona Department of Health Services is set to release public health metrics, which is what we just been talking about, to guide the reopening of schools by August 7th. I think we got them on the 6th. However, Superintendent Hoffman stated in her email that Arizona is not currently in a place to resume in-person or hybrid learning by August 17th. Now, I heard someone say, listen to the people. Well, she's the elected official that we, the people, elected to help us make these type of decisions. So I place a lot of faith in a former teacher looking out for not just the benefit of the government, but for the benefit of parents and students. So I put a lot of faith and credence into that statement. Also, if we look at the 3 metrics that were submitted, we're red on, the county, Pinal County, is red on 2 of them. I would not feel comfortable sending my children or my grandchildren to a school where the metrics were red.
Yeah.
Well,
I did
I'm
message
not-
you.
this-
So just talking to us.
Now, we are next door to Maricopa County. We're very close. Being Creek's right next to us. Maricopa County's metrics are 2 red, 2 reds, and 1 green. But their reds are worse than our reds, meaning Pinal County. So I understand personally the need to open school. I want to see kids in school. I'm a former teacher. I want to see kids in school, but I don't want to put either teachers, kids, or families at helpless. Now, do we need to wait until October the 6th? I don't believe we do. I think there's something in between. So I'd like to hear some more discussion, but I have a recommendation, but I'd like to hear what other people have to say before I make my recommendation.
Okay, Pat, you have anything?
I have a little bit more inside perspective on COVID. The lady that I visited in the ICU today, she didn't expect to get COVID from her grandchild, but she did. And she's probably not going to survive. Now, I know kids don't get that sick, but they are kids. They pass it on. They give it to family, grandparents, or to the handicapped child that they're around. It's hard to ask. Yeah, I want kids to be in school. I understand that there are children who are struggling out there. But they're doing, what if they're dead? No, I mean, seriously, we have to consider the good of all.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. So I pulled up the executive order. And number 3, and I believe that, so I just want to know that I have a deep respect for, everybody's opinion. And that, in today's world, I think sometimes the best we might be able to do is disagree without being disagreeable. And so if we have any disagreements, I just want to know that I'm not being disagreeable with anybody. We're not at that point yet, but I just want to make that clear. But number 3 says each school district and charter school shall begin offering free on-site learning opportunities and support services for students who need a place to go during the day, as required by Executive Order 2020-41, and shall begin August 17, 2020. So I don't know, so at some point on August 17th, there will be on-site in-person instruction. Is that correct? Can you explain that?
Yes, by law, and this has been on several meetings, there seems to be a conflict. Maybe you're saying don't open up, but then there's another portion of the executive order that says you have to open up. The issue that's out there, and there's a number of different categories of individuals, I'll just say with higher needs, that could go ahead and qualify for that. The problem that comes into play, and it's not designed to be teaching per se, it's designed to place kids in a spot. And they would be supervised for a normal school day. The issue that we have right now is a lack of staff. So our proposal, which is also in this resolution, and it's under on-site learning, which you can open up, our proposal would be that we bring back those special needs kids that are classified in, or they're in the self-contained class. So they would have a classification of either C or D. They would be placed in the classroom. I provided instruction in this particular case. The problem that we run into, under federal law, we have to transport those kids. So when we start to transport those kids, we take away our bus drivers as potential people that could watch the other kids. With the model that we're using, we have our teachers teaching, and we have our parapros working with special needs kids. So we take those individuals out of the oversight of, let's just say, a lunch cafeteria that a bunch of kids could be in. And so we run a shortfall of employees there. We have other employees. I'll use our community ed people, because some people say, well, just use your community ed people. Problem with our community ed students, in many cases, they are students. And so they are normally used to working 1 to 2 hours a day, generally at the end of the day or the beginning of the day before school starts. They have their own lives, so to speak, so they are not necessarily available to us during the school day. So we have to take those kids out of the mix. We have some noon aides, which are used to working for an hour, so those kids are out of the mix. So with the number of employees that we have left and available to us, the best that we can do with the free on-site learning is to provide those special needs children that are in class C and D, which would be the self-contained, a place to go. We don't have enough individuals to bring other kids in to the school system because we have nobody to monitor them. And so our on-site learning plan recommendation would be for those individuals to come in. We would go and teach them in small groups so that we can make sure we ensure social distancing and provide all the safety measures that we need. But we sat for the better part of 8 hours trying to figure out all the options that we had available for us, and we just don't have the staffing necessary to expand beyond that. Not sure if there's another question, or I can't remember.
So,
And that plan, having consulted with our attorneys, we're in compliance with the governor's order for us to provide that site, or provide that free on-site.
so if I say my child needs a place to go,
If they're not in special education, category C or D, we do not have the resources, we do not have the individuals to monitor them. If we had 25 kids show up to one of our schools, we wouldn't have the people to monitor them, because all our teachers are teaching. And so that creates a problem. There may be some other districts that have utilized a slightly different model. Some people are asking, well, why are you using this model? Because when we surveyed our community, both in June and in April, we were told in no uncertain terms that the program we ran in the spring was not working. The online was not working using Edgenuity, using Khan, using all the different programs. So we made this modification based on what we were directed by our parents, our students, and our staff to change. But it comes at a cost. It comes at a cost with all of this. This is a situation where there's not win-win types of scenarios that are out there. And so if we, as an example, if we send teachers home to teach, when we go back into person, who's watching the kids in the classroom? So if I'm a teacher who says I have a health issue and I want to teach from home, and we say yes, and there may be some cases we have to. Now we have to go ahead and try to hire someone to come in and watch the kids in that class because the teacher's teaching from home. And so again, this is not a case where there's real simple answers. We spent hours on top of hours on top of hours trying to work this through. And we're trying to do the best we can with the resources that we have available to us based on the input that we receive from staff, students, and parents.
right, so another question is, so we spend, how much money do we spend on those schools?
Between the swivels and the iPads, it was close to $500,000.
So if we have, if we say, we really need help, we have tried to you still have access to watch them.
Right. That's the whole idea, is that when we built our master schedule, you could move as easy as you needed to in or out, and you would go ahead and be able to present the same thing to the kids. And so the kids would get the same teacher throughout the entire year and they could be at home or they could be in school. If they're in school, then those kids are obviously listening to the teacher in school, but all the kids that are home would still get it.
We have that option. Those teachers are currently here.
Right.
On campus.
Yes.
In their classroom.
Yes.
For the professional thing.
Yes.
So as far as if I ask the question, if we have the staff, kids to come back to instructions of not to do a dual, not to do a dual.
Right.
Have some kids coming in and doing some stuff that we can't, so it's either one or the other.
Well, the issue as I read the executive order is that this is not to be teaching time. They're supposed to come in, they're supposed to have their Chromebooks or their device, and they're just supposed to work. We're supposed to manage and monitor them is the way the executive order reads. Yes.
We only have limited abilities to do that.
Yes.
We do have the ability to, because our teachers are here,
Mm-hmm.
to educate kids.
Right.
If they want to come in.
Right.
So,
So that we're all on the same page. When we sat down and looked through all the possible and the executive order, for those of you who have not read the executive order or have read the executive order, please know that there's, I think it's section 7 or 8 that dictates the State Board of Education, ADE, to give further guidance. The groups of individuals that would be eligible, if we had the space, to come back into the school district would number somewhere between 1,600 and 2,000. So effectively, if you tell me to run an on-site program, then we might as well just start on the 17th. Because, right.
So I'll just say that, like I said, I agree that, Hoffman is elected official and essentially sort of, and there are not any easy answers. I believe that we are an educational institution. And as an educational institution, we need to do what our job is. And as, if we are open on the 17th, which I would definitely recommend, I would recommend that we work with Pinal County Health with any issues that come up, because that is how it's been done for years and years, and I think we should continue to do that. And if we count that Pinal County says, you know what, this is just not working, you need to close down a school, but we are working with them, and what they're doing. Whether they say that or not, I don't know. You talked about, do they have the authority to do that? I mean, I don't know, but at least we would be working with them. We are here to make educational decisions. I know that when we look at the matrix, that put it, but I would, that would be my recommendation. To start slow on the 17th, and we have a mitigation plan. It is, we are doing the best we can under the circumstances, and I do not want to put anybody at risk, but certainly parents have a choice. If they're like, no, this is not for me, they can stay home, they can watch on the swell, right? They can participate online as they're doing now.
Chad, your turn.